Okay, I think it's working. Hello, Kalamazoo. Before I get into the conversation, I want to first express my gratitude to Miriam Thomas for organizing this virtual conversation and to all of the staff and folks who were a part of making the exhibition Legendary Voices Art for the Next Century happen and for including my work. I have some questions here that Miriam shared with me, and I'm going to just kind of go one by one. I have some notes also next to me, but I'm hoping to just kind of speak freely and casually about this piece and about my practice. And yeah, I should start out first by introducing myself. My name is Leslie Barlow. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm speaking to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Um, I grew up here. I grew up in South Minneapolis. I also currently live and work here. Um, my studio is in Northeast Minneapolis, and a couple of other background things. I'm an assistant professor of painting and drawing at the University of Minnesota. I am also the director of PF Studios, which is a program that's a part of the organization Public Functionary. We're an arts nonprofit that supports mostly emerging artists in the Twin Cities. And in addition to that, I do a couple other interesting projects, activities, whatever you want to call it. I am the board chair for an organization that's deeply close to my heart called MidWest Mosaic. I started out as an organizer and volunteer all the way back in 2014. And I'm still working with this organization today, and I'll talk a little bit about how that work kind of connects to my arts practice. I also am the creator, founder, and producer of a BIPOC sci-fi convention. So supporting Black and Brown creative voices and um, audiences in the celebration of science fiction, fantasy, futurisms, and fandom, and art, of course. So that's something that I have been really excited about lately. We had our first science fiction convention in 2023, and we're working on our second one, so it's biannual, and it will be happening October 2025. So those are some things I'm kind of getting into. I'm also a member of a mural collective that I helped start in 2020 called Creatives After Curfew, and our mural collective grew out of conversations for accountability around police brutality and justice for George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. And so, being from Minneapolis, uh, and also having grown up in the neighborhood where George Floyd was murdered, we, a lot of artists in 2020, summer 2020, were really activated around making sure there was visibility around the issues in our city, national and nationally, and kind of doing our small part in terms of artists and storytelling to amplify what was happening here in Minneapolis and also record and memorialize uh, yeah, the people that we have lost. So, if you're interested in learning about any of those things that I'm a part of, MidWest Mosaic, Public Functionary, Creatives After Curfew, or the sci-fi convention called ConFluence, you can find all of those things online. But in addition to all of that, I also have a very busy studio practice. So let's get into what my work's about and particularly the piece that's in the exhibition, which is Atquezali at Indigenous Roots is the full title. So the first question I have here is tell us about Atquezali at Indigenous Roots, your inspiration, and the choices you made for this piece. So to talk about Atquezali, I have to first talk about the whole exhibition and what that exhibition is about. Atquezali was one of 16 paintings, and I'm just pulling up my notes here. 16 paintings in the show called Within, Between, and Beyond, which was my first museum solo exhibition in 2021. And that show was supported by this program called the Minnesota Artist Exhibition Program, which specifically seeks to platform artists from Minnesota at the museum. Within Between Beyond was a collaborative project. Even though I was the lead artist on this project, I got to work with a lot of different amazing people and making it happen. The first of which is Lola Osenkoya, who is a mental health professional and helped me conduct all the interviews for Within Between Beyond. Ryan Stapera, who is a filmmaker and recorded all of the interviews for Within Between Beyond. And then I had some other artists, Bayou Bay, who helped me create this kind of installation called Affirmation Altar Shelves, and Andrea Manilov, who also helped me kind of archive and organize the library that I had. There's a library of books within the exhibition. And then Alyssa Paris, who is the co-founder of MidWest Mosaic, that organization I just mentioned a little bit ago, helped organize the public programming for the exhibition. Within Between Beyond is 16 paintings and 16 mini documentary videos that basically kind of invite audiences to hold space for and recognize and reconsider presumptions about race in Minnesota and in the United States. I mean, this show was coming right off of 2020, and so there was a lot of emotion, is politely putting it, anger, frustration, and also reckoning around racial trauma, racial identity, and how do we show up for people in our community and how do we show up for ourselves. And Within Between Beyond was really kind of like, even though I conceived of the show, gosh, back in 2018, it felt really ripe, like the content and the work felt really ripe for the time, and also kind of because we were recording the videos for this exhibition in 2020, I think it actually really changed how people responded to the subject matter and told their stories. What's really unique about the show is that each painting has this corresponding video, so it kind of combats the silent portrait subject in that, yes, you are experiencing, my painting, my interpretation of the person in the painting, but you're also getting to hear their voice and their story from their perspective. And I should really say, these paintings were very collaborative, because the people that I painted were very much a part of the choices being made in terms of that painting. So once I decided who was going to be a part of the show, which was a mixture of invitations and also just kind of like a public call saying, hey, would you like to be a part of this project? Uh, Once I decided who the people were that were going to be in the project, or kind of like distilled it down, every participant was asked, how would you like to be depicted? You get to decide what you're wearing. You get to decide where we're taking the photographs for this painting, and you get to decide um, who you would like to share your painting space with. And so, Atquezali, getting back to the painting in question, the painting that's in the show, Atquezali was um, really interested in having her photo taken for this painting at Indigenous Roots which is an organization and a community cultural hub that her parents started, and she's very much a part of. And that mural that you see sitting behind her is really important to her because it's actually a depiction of her parents. And so, wow, this is really bringing me back. I haven't talked about this painting in a while, but um, yeah, that painting is really significant. That mural behind her, the space is significant. And then you see the shirt that she's wearing, which was a specific choice that she made for the painting. Um, the title of this work, Within Between Beyond, is taken from an essay on identity by Maria P. Root. And that essay really asks us to consider the contradictions and the questions that arise in a country going through an identity crisis layered with historical amnesia. And I found that essay really pivotal in my own identity journey as I was kind of understanding my identity as both a Black woman and a mixed race woman. And so I wanted to take cues from some of that writing in the title of the work and the show. Um, Everybody that is in this series of work or identifies as either mixed race, multiracial, or a transnational or transracial adoptee. So, Atquezali, if you watch the video, the corresponding documentary, which I do have on my website if you're interested in hearing about her life in her own words. She identifies as Mexica or Aztec, and Filipina. So she talks about just understanding her identities, being proud of her identities, and also wanting to basically feel empowered to speak her truths and to tell her, um, yeah, her family and her ancestors' stories. And she says it way better than I do. But yeah, what I love about that piece, besides, the choices she made in terms of how she wanted her story to be shared, was, the bright colors. I think that really connects with her personality and her energy, um, and uh, and her pose. We took hundreds of photos in different spaces and in different ways she was holding her body. And I find that that pose that she has in that painting is really strong and confident. And when I took the photos for that painting, she was just 17 at the time. And so I mean, I just feel like she's just kind of a beacon of hope for young people, and just like really, um, just in terms of finding yourself and putting emphasis and energy on being proud of who you are. Um, so with that, I think we can kind of like move into some of these other questions. The second question I have here is what led you to become an artist? And I think I can just say plainly that I really like storytelling. I always have. As a kid, I was an avid reader. I loved looking at art, going to museums, writing my own stories, illustrating my own little kids' books. I don't know, things that I was always kind of making and telling stories and fascinated by stories. And um, I um, I came from a family of educators and community workers, and there's some other random things in there too, but there's not a lot of artists in my family. Though my dad is a musician and my brother is an actor, I should say visual artist. And so I didn't really know what an artist looked like or like how I didn't understand that an artist could be living and working today. I think I kind of had this idea that artists um, were all artists that were important and made good work were dead. And that was just something that as a kid, that was just the narrative, I guess. And so it wasn't really until college, actually, when I started taking my art classes more seriously. It was always something, again, I was passionate about, I was interested in, and kind of just doing as a hobby. But I think once I got to college and I was really encouraged by my professors at the time, they helped open up my eyes to like being what really like living an artful life looks like and what engaging with the contemporary art world looks like. And so um, I would say that's actually what led me to becoming an artist in a way, right? It's like I felt like somebody kind of needed to give me permission. I was always a creative person, but in terms of like really taking up that space and wanting to pursue art as a practice, right? As a daily commitment. That came later for me. That was in college. What inspires your work? I would say this is another kind of simple answer, and it is people. So I'm really inspired by people, which then in turn means I'm inspired by things like relationships, um, our identities, how we come to know ourselves, how we are in relationship to one another, which then, of course, if you kind of make that, kind of zoom out a bit, I'm interested in the kinds of social codes and structures um, in society that impact the way we understand ourselves, um, the way we move through the world. Uh, our identities, our safety, our mental health, all of those things. And so, um, yeah, I'm really interested in people, but like I said, it kind of breaks down into all of these other elements. I'm inspired by a lot of other artists that work in portraiture and figurative work. So I definitely see myself. I have a lot of artist ancestors, including ones that are still living and working today. So I definitely see my work as a part of a continuum of conversations around representing us and what does representation look like, not just in terms of who is depicted in a piece of art, but also who is that storyteller and whose voices have we um, not gotten to hear from as often, both current and historically. So um, that inspires me as well. And finally, I am really inspired by young people. The program that I work with at Public Functionary, PF Studios, I work with a lot of emerging artists of color that are constantly challenging the status quo, making compelling, risk-taking, bold, ferocious work, and taking up space. And it's really exciting to see and support that kind of passion and activity and growth for the the community of emerging artists of color that we have here in the Twin Cities. Um, I also work with students at the University of Minnesota, and I'm constantly, you know, inspired by the questions and conversations that arise in the classroom. So, I'm constantly pulling from honestly all of my experiences. And that's what keeps me going, both inside and outside the studio. The next question is, what are you working on now? What am I working on now? I just wrapped up a epic children's book project called Revolutions Are Made of Love. It's a story about the civil rights activists, James Boggs and Grace Lee Boggs. Ooh, sorry. So James Boggs and Grace Lee Boggs did incredible work. Uh, they're civil rights activists, but I mean, their work continued way beyond that time period and also uh, into contemporary times. I mean, their legacy is just astounding. And um, if you're curious about their lives and work, I highly recommend looking up. They've written tons of literature, so you can look up books, essays, and all types of stuff online. They both passed, so it was really interesting working on this project and trying to speak to their legacy and the work that they did both in Detroit and nationally. So yeah, I was illustrating that book. That book is written by Sun Young Shin and Melina Mangal. They it's published by Learner, and that book should be released November of this year. So I had the writing for that book and was creating the images all of 2024. So now that I have kind of been released from that project, um, I am working on a series that kind of connects with the ConFluence work that I'm doing, the sci-fi convention, um, which that is a huge collaboration in and of itself. I named that I'm the founder and producer of that, but we have like over 30 artists, gamers, organizers, just nerds that have come together and are making that event, that 2-day event happen. But for my part, as well, I really wanted to speak to um, the cosplay subculture in painting. I've been wanting to talk about it for a while, particularly Black and Brown folks in participating in that subculture, and what the kind of liberating and fantastical like aspects of that, and also the difficult parts of participating and the othering that happens in those still predominantly white and male spaces. So I'm doing, yeah, a new series kind of talking about that subculture and also interviewing cosplayers directly and painting their portraits. So that's something I'm working on. And I'm also uh, working on some lithographs actually with High Point Center for Printmaking. I produced my first lithograph in collaboration with High Point last year, and that was an incredible experience. I'm not a printmaker by any means, but I guess now I am because I made a lithograph. But there's this amazing collaborative program at High Point where they work with artists that printmaking is not their primary medium and kind of support bringing their ideas from whatever they are working with currently into the print realm. So had some great studio visits with the folks that work at High Point talking about my painting process. We produced our first print together last year, and I'm going to be working on a couple more prints with them this year. And it's really exciting. I'm having so much fun with that process and learning how some of the things that like I love about painting are I can replicate in photolitho. That's what I'm working with, but also that the other ways that it just totally like expands and obliterates like um my practice in terms of like what I can do because it's just a different way of working, and I love that. I love the challenges that that brings, and excited to see what the next two prints will look like. The last question as we wrap up here is, can you tell us more about the collaborative work you do to support and connect with other artists? Oh, I feel like I kind of already said that. So I don't know how much deeper I need to go into this, but I spoke on collaboration in several ways, both with the work I'm doing, like mural work with Public Functionary, um, even the project with In Between Beyond, right, was incredibly collaborative, and um, how I spoke about how those paintings, took shape, speaking specifically about Atquezali's painting. Um, a lot of my paintings, not all, but a lot of my paintings do start from a conversation. So they're generated from something that happens between me and another person. And that conversation then becomes documentation, and that even can be collaborative. And I'm sometimes recording conversations, and the work is, yeah, inherently relational in that way. And so I definitely see it as a collaboration too. And then ConFluence, potentially my greatest collaboration of all time, which, like I said, has 30 plus people on the organizing team, in addition to all of the artists and writers and uh, just like really dope makers that we support in that space over a weekend, is pretty incredible. So yeah, I am really interested in uh, ways to that I can and we can, right, all of us, connect artists and create space for artists to um, share their work, to take risks, to connect with audiences, to um, be playful, to have a platform. Because yes, because I am an artist and so it affects me directly as well, but because there's so many incredible ideas and stories that still need to be told and seen. And I like kind of, yeah, I'm doing my small part in that that work, and um yeah, getting that mutual support right back. I think I'll end it there. I probably went over time, but thank you again for having me. Um, Also, side note, I will not be watching this after I finish the recording here. I hate the sound of my own voice and even like watching myself um, record something. So I hope that this has been useful and interesting, and I hope that it comes across well. Sorry, I'm just alone in my studio and the acoustics probably aren't the best, but thank you again for having me, and Um, yeah, thank you for including Atquezali in the show. See ya.